Live with CDP, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast live on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor FM. Now here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP Sports Podcast, Thursday, July 14th, 2022, Season 4, Episode 8, which is hard to believe. I'm looking forward to speaking to my guest tonight. His name is Wes Wolfe. He is an assistant coach now with the Erie Otters. He was with Erie for 5 years, and then he left to become the head coach and general manager of the Ontario Junior Hockey League's Cobourg Cougars, and now he's back with the Erie Otters. So I'm looking forward to speaking to Wes Wolfe about his coaching career in hockey and his return to the OHL's Erie Otters this upcoming season, along with head coach BJ Adams, with who they were both assistant coaches on the 2017 OHL champion Erie Otters team as well. So bear with me, guys. I'm going to bring on Wes Wolfe, the assistant head coach now of the Erie Otters. Hey, Wes, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Good. Well, I really appreciate you coming on tonight. And like I said, I'm already looking forward to the OHL training camp opening up in another 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, it's crazy that it's coming up this fast on us here. I think we're actually starting a little bit early in Erie this year due to some scheduling conflicts and things like that. So I think we're about 5 weeks away.
Wow, hard to believe. I was going to ask you, were you able to watch some of the OHL playoffs and the OHL final between Hamilton and Windsor and some of the Memorial Cup?
I was. I am actually based out of the Niagara region here in Ontario in the off season. So I was able to get out to Game 7 to watch Hamilton win on home ice. It was a really cool atmosphere in the building. I think they set a record that night for highest attendance at an OHL final game. So it was great to take that in, and obviously brought back lots of great memories of my time in Erie winning the championship in 2017. And then definitely tuned into the Memorial Cup, as most people do here in Canada, and always lots of interest. It's a great event, and it was really cool to see St. John win on home ice as well.
I was going to say, and I was at that Game 5 between Windsor and Hamilton. That was a great series. And in my opinion, I think Windsor took it out of Hamilton. I didn't think Hamilton had a lot of gas left in them for that Memorial Cup, in my opinion.
Yeah, they really pushed them like no one else really had to that point in the playoffs. Windsor, obviously extremely well coached with Mark Savard and his staff there. Jared Smith is the associate who has been there for a number of years. I thought they were really heavy in the offensive zone, did a great job of, forcing Hamilton to defend. And you're right that it looked like they took a good piece out of them for that tournament. And it gets to be a really long grind. This season was really unique, probably felt even longer. But for a team like Hamilton, having gone through regular season plus playoffs, it was probably pretty tough to face a fresh squad like St. John in that final.
And I was going to say, I was at Game 5 in Hamilton as a media member, and that press box is pretty intimidating going up to on those catwalks. I don't know if you've been up to the media press box at the First Ontario Center, but it's pretty intimidating going up that catwalk.
It is. I've been up there a couple times to help set up our video equipment in Erie. My first couple years, that was one of my duties to help get that set up. So it's definitely a unique experience on that catwalk.
Definitely. Hey, and I was going to say, this is so good for the league too, with the Hamilton Bulldogs. A couple of championships in their 7 years back being in the OHL, and Hamilton's had a long history of OHL hockey. And ironically, the Otters franchise with Masters for a long time, and actually were the Hamilton Steelhawks from 84 to 88, and then became Niagara, and then the Otters have been around since 96, which has been great.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, getting hired by Erie the first time. I grew up in Niagara Falls, Ontario, so the Niagara Falls Thunder were a team that obviously I got out to watch at the old Memorial Arena here in town, and a lot of history. I got, the old Niagara Falls Thunder hockey cards and, some old apparel. So getting hired by Erie, there was a nice little connection between Niagara Falls, my hometown, and going to Erie.
And this is how old I am. I remember the Niagara Falls Flyers before they moved to, I think, North Bay in '82 to become the Centennials, I believe.
Yeah, they still have a glass case dedicated to the Flyers. There are 2 Memorial Cup championships here at the Gale Center in Niagara Falls. I was just there this morning, actually, checking out some of the old pictures. I believe 1968 was the last time they won a Memorial Cup. But they've got some pretty cool memorabilia at the rink still in honor of the Flyers teams.
I was going to say, it just shows you how hard it is to win the Memorial Cup. It's hard enough to win the league championship, as you know, but to win that Memorial Cup is so difficult. And I think Wolfe hasn't won one since 1986 as the Wolfe Platers, and Hamilton hasn't won one, I think, since 76 as the Hamilton Finn Cup. So it just shows you how difficult winning any kind of championship is, like, especially in junior hockey.
Without a doubt, all 3 leagues are so strong here in Canada, and the competition is fierce every year. I think, this year Hamilton was such a great team, and obviously beat the 2 champions of the other leagues. But that host team, adds a funny wrinkle into that tournament format where, a team like St. John loses in the first round of playoffs, and they get to get healthy and rest and get a little bit stronger. So I think it just adds an extra layer of difficulty to winning that championship, because it's not necessarily the same level of playing field in terms of what teams have gone through to get there.
Absolutely. And going through 4 rounds of playoffs to win a league championship is difficult enough as well. And I was going to ask you too, this is so good for this league. You got Hamilton. I think that's going to be their long term now. They got great ownership, and hopefully they'll have that arena renovated. And then the Niagara Ice Dogs have a nice, I haven't been there yet, but I've heard it's a nice, and now they've got new ownership, which is going to bring stability. Do you think your hometown in Niagara Falls will ever get an OHL team again, or will you think, because of the teams in St. Catharines, that's close enough to the Niagara region?
Yeah, I think at this point, the team in St. Catharines is probably speaking for the whole region. There's a lot of great hockey here in the Niagara region, a rich tradition in the Junior B League with, all the teams. Each city here kind of has one. I think, Niagara, as it stands, the Ice Dogs are typically top 5 in attendance in the league every single year. And I think a big part of that is because they do a great job of attracting fans from around the region. So, there was probably a time where St. Catharines and Niagara Falls had the ability to sustain, 2 OHL franchises. But I think now, between, like I said, the Junior B Loop and the Ice Dogs drawing, it would probably be pretty tough. So I can't imagine that's in the plans anytime soon, but I guess never say never, because you've seen so many different teams leave markets and return ultimately years later. So maybe one day.
Okay. Before we get into some questions, now there's obviously 3 U.S. franchises, 2 in Michigan and Flint and Saginaw in Erie. Would you like to see another U.S.-based team, OHL team in the U.S.?
I think from a selfish standpoint, the answer is yes. For Erie, we travel through the border at the Peace Bridge to get to 90% of our road games, and oftentimes going through Niagara and Hamilton, who aren't even in the same conference, to get to divisional rivals like Kitchener, London, Guelph. So I would love to see a team, in Buffalo or Cleveland, just to lighten the travel load for Erie, but also because, I think as the league expands its footprint, it's good, for the league to have presence for player recruitment. The footprint extends into New York and Ohio, and I think some of those players from that area, having an OHL team would certainly increase the awareness and presence, and so from a recruiting standpoint for players, I think it would also help the league. But that's just my opinion. Like I said, it's maybe a little biased because we're in Erie.
Okay, no problem. I just want to get to some questions, Wes. Can you just tell my audience here in Guelph? I'm obviously a Guelph Storm fan and do volunteer work with Rogers TV as a camera operator. But can you just tell my audience a little bit about yourself? And when did you decide you wanted to pursue a career in hockey, in coaching in hockey?
For sure. This is my second tour, obviously, with the Otters, having just been hired about a month ago. But I really got into coaching when I was about 14 years old. I have a younger brother who also played hockey. I played, travel hockey growing up here in Niagara Falls, and I have two older sisters who played hockey. My dad was very involved in coaching, and so with my younger brother, I used to go out and help at his practices and be the guy who's out there demonstrating drills and helping the younger guys out. And I think I learned pretty quickly that was something I was really passionate about. So from the time I was, 16 to 20, I was involved coaching his teams, at the select level and house league and single A. And then when my junior playing career was done at 21 years old, I got into coaching AAA hockey here in Niagara Falls. So I did that for, 4 years, moved up to the junior B ranks, was involved with the St. Catharines Falcons junior B team for 2 years, and then was hired by the Erie Otters in 2016. So it's been a long road. I'm 32 years old right now. I've been coaching over half my life, which is kind of hard to believe, but it's definitely something that I realized really early in my life was something that I loved doing, and I've been fortunate enough to turn it into a career.
How much of an adjustment was it being a player into being a coach?
I think it was a little bit easier for me simply because I'd been doing both concurrently, playing and coaching while I was a teenager. But there's definitely an adjustment that you go through in terms of like your emotional investment in what's happening on the ice. I think as a coach, you have to be far more pragmatic in your approach and not necessarily, be reacting to everything happening. I think as a player, it's very easy to, get caught up in the ebb and flow of the game, the ups and downs, whether it's, with players on the other team. As a coach, there's just so much going on that you have to factor in. It's, who's up next on the ice, setting the tone for your team. Like one of the best quotes I think I've ever heard is that you have to act like your emotions are contagious, because they are. And so I think, as a coach, you definitely have to be far more measured in your approach and methodical. And I think that's something that, a lot of players who get into coaching, it takes them time to realize, hey, I can't be always on the referee or, be so emotional as it relates to the game. I mean, the passion is always there, but I think you have to be far more inwardly passionate as a coach in some regards, and then, be focused more on communicating and the job that has to get done. So there's definitely an adjustment period that you go through.
Basically keep even keel, because if the players see you getting upset or getting emotional like them, then how do you expect them to react to you? So I thank you for answering that question. I wanted to ask you about that. So this leads to my next question. I wanted to ask you, Wes, did you have any mentor or mentors when you were first starting out in the coaching industry, after playing the game as a player and then going in the coaching aspect?
Without a doubt. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is obviously my dad, Mick Wolfe. He's a longtime volunteer and coach in boys and girls hockey. He coached both my brother and myself and my older sisters. He was always somebody that I looked up to, very involved in the community, and inspired me to get involved. But I think, as I've gone through this, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of great people. Frank and Rick Gurney, who are still involved with the St. Catharines Junior B team, kind of took me under their wing when I was a young coach just getting started. Murray Nystrom, who was at Brock University for 16 years, whom I maintain a close friendship with to this day. And, Chris Knobloch, who was the first head coach who hired me in Erie, who's now the head coach of the Hartford Wolfpack in the American Hockey League. I could probably go on and on and on of all the great people that, I've had a chance to learn from and develop relationships. I think that's probably one of my favorite parts of the game, being involved in it as long as I have, is that you meet so many great people and, the willingness to give, whether it's advice or if it's just lending an ear. There's so many great people that you meet as you go through the sport. So I've had a lot of great mentors, and hopefully, in kind, I can turn it back to other young coaches as I come through the system myself.
You kind of liked as well, like a Scotty Bowman or Mike Keenan, or is there somebody in the NHL that you've learned a little bit from their styles?
It's funny you asked that question. I was asked this recently. When I was a young player and young hockey fan, the Ottawa Senators were my favorite team. All growing up, and so the the number one guy that I always looked up to was Jacques Martin. He was kind of unique in his era as, a much more calm and collected coach. I think probably in an era where you still saw that fiery passion. He was sort of the guy leading the charge that you see more common today, the coaches who are, as you kind of alluded to, even keeled. I think that was kind of Jacques' approach, and Ottawa's ascent from being an expansion franchise to one of the premier teams in the NHL in the late 90s, early 2000s. I give a lot of credit to him because he was a huge part of that and was definitely somebody in the NHL that I looked up to growing up.
And I was going to say, Jacques Martin was the head coach of the 86 Memorial Cup champion Guelph Platers team that came from nowhere to win the OHL championship and then to win the Memorial Cup. And former Maple Leaf and Flame Gary Roberts was on that team, and the late, great Steve Chason. And as a 14-year-old kid, I didn't realize how special that team was and the job that he did in Guelph in his time here.
Yeah, it's funny when you go back and you look at some of the rosters and the coaches who are parts of those teams in junior hockey. You often forget, and then it's years later you look back and it's like, oh wow, they had this guy and that guy, and it's really cool to track coaches as they go along, and just like the players, the OHL's a development league, and so I think that's something that I try and keep in mind too, that, as much as the focus, is on developing the players as hockey players and as people, I'm always looking to learn and develop with the people around me as well too. So it's definitely cool to look back at some of those things.
Yeah. My first OHL game is going to be 40 years in September when my late father took me to see the expansion Guelph Platers take on the Kitchener Rangers at the old Guelph Memorial Gardens in Guelph, and I've been a fan of the league for the last 40 years, and I've been lucky to see so many Hall of Fame coaches and players come out throughout the years in Guelph with the Storm, or with the Platers originally, and then with the Storm starting in 91, 92.
Yeah, it's funny. I had one of those moments years ago. When I was really young, we actually lived in Sudbury, and those are some of the first memories I have of hockey, is going to Wolves games with my dad and my grandpa. He passed away last year, my grandfather, but in 2019, we were in town in Sudbury to catch a game, and my dad actually went and picked up my grandpa, and so we had three generations under the roof. I was on the bench with the Otters, in the Sudbury Memorial Arena. It was pretty cool, kind of coming full circle. Like I said, those were some of my earliest memories watching hockey at in Sudbury, watching the Wolves in the OHL.
Yeah, and Maple Leafs longtime announcer Joel Bowen did Sudbury Wolf games before he came to Toronto in '82, I believe.
Yeah, that would be a little bit before my time. I can't say. I know that the Joe's from that area for sure, but like you said, lots of really cool ties, coaching, players, media, you name it. The OHL kind of seems to be the breeding ground.
Yep. And everyone in the league has been great about what I'm trying to get into with radio. And like you said, I'm in a different profession than you are, but I'm just starting out and learning from all my guests and people from various leagues. I'm very lucky to have an opportunity to have this platform to speak to people like yourself, Wes. Thank you so much.
Oh, I really appreciate you having me on. It's like I said, when you ask me about mentors, there's so many great people in this sport. And I think, you definitely have experienced yourself how willing people seem to be to give their time and expertise. And I think that's probably, all the problems that you do see in hockey culture. One of the really good things about hockey culture is that, there are so many good people willing to help each other out, for sure.
Absolutely. And everybody has been great from the OHL, like Josh Sweetland and Mike Stubbs and Jim Van Horn from the London Knights broadcast team as well. Now, I had to ask you this question too, Wes. How did you originally come about the role of assistant coach with Erie originally back in 2016?
So I was fresh off of my second season with the St. Catharines Falcons in the GOJHL. My first as a head coach with that team. We lost in the league finals to the Caledonia Corvairs. And, at the time I was 26, turning 27, really just starting to get some momentum in my coaching career. But, at that point where it was probably more of a hobby or a second job than it was, an actual career, but something that I aspired to. And as I mentioned, Frank Gurney was a mentor of mine. He was the general manager of the Falcons. He had actually worked on staff with the Niagara Ice Dogs with Dave Brown, who was the general manager in Erie. And so Erie was looking for an assistant coach at the time. Frank had happened to be talking to Dave about, a couple different things on the phone. And Dave had mentioned that he was looking for an assistant. And Frank really made that introduction. And so I ended up sending my resume along, and I had a couple of really great productive coffee meetings with both Chris Knobloch, the head coach, and then Dave Brown, the general manager. And a few weeks later, I was lucky enough to be offered the job. And I guess, as they say, the rest is history.
Okay, and what you're basically saying too, even when what I'm trying to do too is connections are huge because if you make a lot of contacts, somebody might say, "Hey, I like this guy's work. Give this guy an opportunity." So it's huge in the coaching aspect industry as well, making connections and stuff like that.
Without a doubt, I think as it's the same in most industries, I guess the old cliche is it's not what you know, it's who you know. I think that's true to an extent. I mean, you certainly need to develop your skills and make sure that you're worthy of the positions that are available. I think that's something that, as you build relationships, the only way to truly build your network is to be reliable and people be able to put their name out on your behalf. So, I've worked very hard at building that network, been very lucky to meet some great people, but I think it's something that you continue to cultivate as time goes by and make connections like this one where you meet new people and you really never know where a relationship will end up as, people go in different paths. I just said this to a former player on the phone the other day. He was looking to use me as a reference for a job. And, he was thanking me. And I said, one, happy to do it because they were such a great person in the time that I coached them. But two, you never know when it comes full circle. I may be asking them of the same thing years down the road. So definitely the relationships you make along the way and the connections are extremely important.
And I also noticed I've made friendships from doing this podcast and my media work too, and also talking to people from around the OHL on my podcast as well, like Manny Pava and Steve Bell, the Windsor Spitfire broadcasters who do a great job with that organization. And you start to get to know people from other organizations, and you want them to do well as well. You get to know them as people as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of great people, as we've talked about, that you do find yourself rooting for. Like I remember at the start of the pandemic, I was doing a virtual webinar series and meeting some new people. I remember, we did one on media and broadcasting around the OHL, and we were joined by Mike Stubbs in London and Dominic Hennig at the time, who was with Flint, who's now back in the OHL with the Kitchener Rangers, and Mike Batano, who was in Saginaw, and then Aaron Cooney, who was with Erie at the time, who he's since moved on to the San Diego Gulls in the American League. It's a lot of fun, once you get to know people, to follow their careers and like you said, root for them.
Definitely. Now I have to ask you this question. What was it like being a member of the coaching staff on that 2017 OHL champion Erie Otters squad?
I'm not sure that there are words to really describe how special that experience was. On a personal level, that was my first year coaching in the Ontario Hockey League. Coming into training camp, your nerves are no different as a coach than they are as a player. You look at the roster, and we had players like Dylan Strome and Alex DeBrincat on the team. I think there were probably some expectations for that group going into the year where you're not exactly sure how things are going to go. The team had just won 50 games 3 consecutive years going into that season. And so there was already quite a history of success, with the program. And, as that year went on, I think the expectations just continued to rise. Dylan had started the year with the Arizona Coyotes, and they sent him back, in October, November. Same happened with Eric Chernak, who was in the American League at the time, and then he got sent back. And once those two things kind of happened, it was full systems go. The team really started to take off. We made some trades at the deadline, picked up Anthony Cirelli and Warren Fogle. Just there's so many great memories of that run through the playoffs. Second round, beating London, Game 7 overtime on home ice, winning the Western Conference title in Owen Sound on the road, and celebrating that on the way back on the bus, but knowing that the job wasn't finished. And then probably most special of all of them was Game 5 at home in Erie, sold out crowd, 7,000 people, and seeing the overtime game-winning goal to win the OHL championship. That was an amazing year. Great experience at the Memorial Cup as well. We fell short in the final game against Windsor, who was the host, but so many great memories that season, and great friendships with players and staff members to this day that I think, we'll always look back and remember that as a special moment in our lives.
And I was going to say, what point of that year did you and the coaches know, hey, we've got something possibly special here? Was it right in training camp early on, or was it maybe during the middle of the regular season you kind of knew something was special with that team?
I think going into the season, there was not much certainty about what the team was going to be. As I said, Dylan Strome was an early NHL pick. It was his 19-year-old year. And, there was speculation that he may be up with Arizona the entire season. And so, the first 2 games we played actually were on the road. We played Windsor and London, and we lost both. And I think, initially we were thinking that the team may be, heading into a rebuild. Like I said, they had just won 50 games 3 years in a row, lost in the finals in 2015. So it wasn't really until Stromer got sent back and then Eric Chernak was sent back. He was with the LA Kings organization at the time before being traded to Tampa Bay. I think once they sort of joined the fold again, we started to string together a bunch of wins. We realized, hey, this is going to be this group's final chance at going for it. And so I give, Dave Brown, the general manager, and Jim Waters, the owner of the team, who really supported the team doing what they needed to do to go for it. I think it was probably, around November, December, where we realized, hey, this has the potential to be something really special.
Okay. Now I had to quickly, are you still okay for time for a few more minutes?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay, I got to ask you this as assistant coach in the league, and you've been with Erie for a number of years now. What is your take on the host team being in the Memorial Cup automatically? Because I know 17 Windsor, they won the Memorial Cup, but they had an early playoff exit, and same with St. John's. I just wanted to get your 2 cents on how you like this current format of the Memorial Cup.
Yeah, obviously it's it's bittersweet, you could say. I mean, the whole experience being there was amazing. I really did feel in 2017 that we were the strongest team, in the CHL. We won the OHL championship and beat the Western League champ and the Quebec League champ both times. and Windsor had the benefit, of 40 days off to rebuild back to training camp strength, to get themselves stronger and prepare for over a month to play that tournament. But that being said, there's really no excuses. I think you go into the tournament, any team can win. I think it's fantastic for the CHL that there is a host team, that they can sell out the arena, that there's an opportunity there for the hometown fans to see their team, like watching St. John, how special it was. And even being in Windsor, though they were on the losing side of it, the hometown fans to get to see that, it was great. I don't know that logistically there is an opportunity for the league to change it. I don't know how much sense it would make to do it any other way. There's certainly, merits to the argument on both sides. Having been on the losing side of it, I can tell you that maybe I wouldn't give you such a rational answer 5 years ago, but now that I've had some time to digest it and think about it, not so sour anymore. I mean, it is what it is. I think, you go to the tournament and you don't want to take away from the host teams. I mean, like Windsor that year when they won, even though they lost in the first round to London, they were, I believe, a 98-point team in the regular season. And they've had all kinds of NHL alumni off of that group. So they were a special group on their own. So, I mean, I could probably be persuaded to believe that they should find another way, but I also see, the reason why they do it the way they do.
Okay. Thanks for answering that question. And then this one I got to ask you, Wes. What made you decide to leave Erie, and how hard was it to leave the Otters organization that you had been with for 5 years to take over the GM and coach of the Ontario Junior Hockey League's Cobourg Cougars for the 21-22 season? And how hard was it for you as a head coach and an assistant coach during this pandemic shutdown for a good year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah, I think to answer the first question, like, it was probably the hardest decision I've had to make so far in my career, leaving Erie. In the first place, as I kind of alluded to, the entire organization from the top down is just so first class. Jim and Sheila Waters, who own the team, Dave Brown, the general manager, and Scott Grieve, the assistant GM. The entire business staff with Jamie Szynski and Darcy Shabola, and just so many great people in and around that team, the fans, who support that organization through thick and thin. It was really tough. I think the reason why I decided to leave was to try and get some more experience as a head coach. My personal goal is to be a head coach in the OHL and take coaching as far as I can. Maybe one day, making it to the NHL, who knows? But I think for me to be a head coach in the OHL, I wanted to gain some more valuable experience in a good league as a head coach, and on the GM side of it as well, to kind of diversify, that portfolio, so to speak. It was a great experience. As you mentioned, the pandemic made it extremely challenging, from training camp, where we were still wearing, masks and having to social distance and separate the players in rooms, through to season finally starting with no fans to limited fans to wearing a mask on the bench, which I'd never done before. Then, we were shut down from the end of December to the end of January, not seeing the team at all, trying to stay connected virtually, and then being ready for a mad dash from, the beginning of February to, April, May in the playoffs. We basically played games every other day to catch up for the time we had lost. So it was unique and challenging, and provided a lot of great learning experiences for me, which ultimately was really the reason I left, was to try and learn. So there was a lot of benefit. It was a very hard decision, and obviously I'm really grateful to be heading back to Erie to rejoin all of those great people.
And I was going to say, you had a good year in Cobourg, 28-19-2, I believe, for 63 points, and you guys lost in the third round. So you guys had some playoff success too.
Yeah, it was kind of a tale of two seasons. We didn't get off to the greatest start. It was a challenge for me coming to a new league, trying to figure things out, new team, trying to install, our identity and style of play. I was the assistant GM to start the year and took over as the general manager in mid-November, made a number of changes to the roster to fit more in line with how we kind of saw the team playing. And I think that pause due to COVID in the middle of the year, December, January, was a blessing in disguise. It really gave our coaching staff an opportunity to take stock of what were priorities moving forward and reevaluate. So when we got back, it was almost like starting a brand new season. And for me, as a new head coach in that league, was like getting the second year with our group. So, the second half of the year was by far our strongest. I think we finished on a 14-3-3 run in our last 20 games of the regular season. And then, we're able to clinch the East Division playoff title and make it to the conference finals. And we're, just a couple games away from being in the league championship. So it was definitely, great from a team success level. And then I believe we had 14 player commitments to higher levels, 5 to the OHL, a couple to Canadian University, NCAA Division I and Division III player commitments. So I think that's probably something that I'm most proud of, is on top of the team success, we were able to help so many of those young players, pursue their hockey careers beyond playing junior A hockey. It was a great experience.
So do you feel that you're now even a better coach now coming back to Erie the second time than the first time you were there for 5 years, just from your 1 year experience in Cobourg?
Without a doubt. I think as a coach, you try to evolve year after year and learn, regardless, and try and apply those learnings to a new season. So I think, having a little bit more perspective from my first experience, those first 5 years in Erie, and then adding on this whole new experience in Cobourg, it made me immensely better as a coach and as a human being. And you try and, like I said, apply those as you go into a new year. Without a doubt, I feel like I've evolved.
Okay. Just a couple more quick questions I wanted to ask you, Wes. How did you end up coming back to the Otters, and how much did current head coach BJ Adams influence your decision to return to the Otters?
Well, that relationship with BJ is definitely something that was integral to that decision making. After the year in Cobourg had ended, I made the decision to resign and leave the OJHL. I think, I loved my time there and was able to accomplish, I think, a lot in a short period of time. But I also knew that the OHL was where I wanted to be. So I think to end up back in Erie came as a bit of a surprise at first. I didn't know exactly what was on the horizon. I spoke to BJ a couple of times, and we obviously maintained our friendship, throughout the year. He's somebody that I respect as a coach and admire as a human being. We've worked together obviously in Erie for 5 years, but also with Can-Am hockey schools for probably even longer than that. And so that definitely was a big part of the decision to return. And then for all the reasons that I alluded to before, the great management team that they have and the fans, and my experience was just so good the first time around that, when that opportunity became a reality, the job was offered, it was too good of an opportunity to pass up. And looking at the current iteration of the team, it's certainly on the upswing, building back up with the second overall pick, Malcolm Spence, coming to town, and I think the expectations will just continue to rise. And I'm really looking forward to growing with the current group of players.
And I was going to say, and are you familiar with Vince Lace? I guess he was with Hamilton a few years ago, Vince.
It's funny. Vinny was actually in Erie prior to my time, and he left to go to Hamilton. I actually had taken his old posting in Erie the first time I was hired. We got to know each other, obviously coaching against each other in the league. And then, through COVID, the canceled season, we were both a part of a virtual coaching network. We got together once a week on Monday nights for, I would say a good 10 months every Monday on Zoom for an hour, a group of 15 to 20 coaches. And Vince and I both happened to be on that call. So I really got to know him and what he's all about. So I'm really looking forward to, to getting together in person and actually getting a chance to coach together after spending so much time together virtually in the previous couple of years.
Okay, just two quick questions to ask you, and this one I had to ask you too. Being from Canada and living in Niagara Falls, during the during the hockey season with the Otters, do you commute back and forth from Erie to Niagara Falls, or do you rent a place and stay in Erie during the season?
No, I've got an apartment lined up in Erie. My wife and I, at the first go around, we're still dating, and so she lived here on the Canadian side. I had my apartment over there, and she'd come to visit at any opportunity. And we got married. Our 1-year anniversary is actually in a couple of days. Our plan: we have a house in. Thank you. Yeah, we have a house in Crystal Beach, Ontario, which is right on Lake Erie. I think our plan is to, keep it, but move together to the apartment in Erie for hockey season. And then, when the season is done, come back to our place here in Ontario.
Okay. I had to ask you, I was just kind of curious of how that worked with the coaches and stuff like that. Now this is my last question I wanted to ask you. What makes Erie a great hockey league city? And what are some of your favorite restaurants in the city to dine at?
I think the easy answer is obviously the fans. They're so passionate. I don't know that I could even describe it. There's just something unique about the fans in Erie. In a 7,000 seat arena that's filled with their fans, they make it sound like it's 25,000. It's just incredible how passionate the people are about the team and the support that they give. Seemingly unconditionally. But on top of that, as a city, I would consider Erie to be a hidden gem. It's on Lake Erie. There's a great, coastline where there's some hotels that have been built up. It's beautiful in the summer. There's a lot of family fun things to do. And there's a great tradition of hockey in Erie, dating back to the 80s and 70s. The East Coast Hockey League was there with the Erie Blades. And, so there's a pretty rich tradition there at what's now the Erie Insurance Arena. So, I could go on and on about the team, but, I think I've kind of seen the graphics flashing. You look at the recent history with the Otters, the NHL alumni that have passed through. I think it's really a testament to how great the organization is, whether, it's the players that I was fortunate enough to coach, the aforementioned Strome, DeBrincat, the Radish brothers, Sorelli, Fogle, Eric Chernak, Jamie Drysdale. But even, before that, Connor McDavid, Andre Burakovsky, Travis Dermott, Ryan O'Reilly, the list goes on and on and on of great players who passed through Erie. So I think it's true testament to what the city and team are all about. And then, favorite restaurants, my go-to is probably the breakfast place. Part of my routine used to be, on game days, going in early, having our meetings in the morning, getting a good workout in, and then heading straight to the breakfast place. They've got some great offerings there. I used to trade tickets with the owner of the breakfast place, free breakfast for a ticket to the game. So that was always nice for me. But, there's a lot of great dining. And I think probably what I know I'm looking forward to, and so is my wife, and I was just talking to my parents, is the tax-free shopping in Erie. That's always a big draw for people, is the tax-free shopping.
Yes, and I've been there many times, and I've even been to an Erie Seawolves game many years ago, the AA team of the Tigers. And I had Sean Bernard, your Otters radio guy, on last year. Great guy. And I said to Sean, if I come back to Erie, I'll let you know, because I definitely would like to see an Otters game in Erie and that as well, because I've been to that city many times, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing the Storm and Otters play in Erie this year.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I know we'd love to have you. Sean is a great guy, does a great job. This year I still watched a lot of the games, and he does the play-by-play, and he brings a lot of energy to it. So I've been getting to know Sean a little bit more. He does such a fantastic job with all of the media related things with the team and beyond. Really, he's gotten involved in the community. But I'm looking forward to getting back to Erie to catch a Seawolves game too. It's just such an underrated level, AA baseball. It's the summer night that, again, the fans are crazy for the team there. And they used to do Monday night Buck nights, $1 draft beer, $1 hot dogs, $1 popcorn. You can't really beat that.
Definitely. So before I let you go, where can my audience, if they wish to follow you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on all forms of social media, not TikTok. That's outside of my range, but on Twitter at Wes Wolfe 91. It's the same Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. My profile is pretty visible. It's just my name, Wes Wolfe, and these days I find myself tweeting more, just celebrating the successes of former players and of the team, but sometimes I'll chime in with thoughts on hockey and stuff like that. It's always great to make connections like this. That's how, you and I were able to be introduced on social media. I think we talked before on the air about just how crazy it is, the technology we have. So I love connecting with people and happy to, chat with anyone who's looking to connect for sure.
Okay. And when I do come down to Erie this fall for a game, hopefully I'll be able to say hi to Sean and yourself as well. And I'll have to cheer for both teams because, like I said, the more I do this podcast, I'm meeting more people across the league. And it's kind of want to see all the teams do well, to be honest.
Well, without a doubt, I know we appreciate that. And you'll have to let us know when you're coming. We'll make sure we get you hooked up.
Okay, Wes. Hey, I was going to say thank you so much for coming on and enjoy the rest of your summer because it'll go by quick. And hope we'll definitely see you and Sean in the fall for back for the OHL and looking forward to the 2022-23 OHL season.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
Thanks, Wes. Have a good night. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my podcast with Wes Wolfe. He's the assistant coach with the Erie Otters. He just came back after 1 year with the Ontario Junior Hockey League's Cobourg and Cougars. So he'll be back with BJ Adams on that staff and Vince Lace as well. So the Otters are coming off a tough season last year. Erie was 27-37, 58 points, and number 9 in the OHL Western Conference. And they only scored 223 offensively in 68 games. But Erie with their high draft pick, number 2 overall, and with good ownership, like Wes was saying, and good management, good coaching staff, the Erie Otters should be an improved hockey team in 22-23. And I'm hoping to go into a game at the Erie Insurance Arena, which is right beside the Erie Seawolves baseball park as well. If you guys have never been to Erie, check it out. It's a great city. It's about 100,000 people, maybe a little bigger, and it's about an hour and 15 minutes from Cleveland and about 2 hours from Pittsburgh and about an hour and 10 minutes from Buffalo. It's basically in a central location between Buffalo, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. So, and they do love the Otters. And like I said, the Otters have won 2 championships in their time there since 1996, in 2002 and 2017. And they've drafted players. They've produced players like Connor McDavid, Alex DeBrincat, who's now with Ottawa, Travis Dermott, a defenseman, Jamie Drysdale with the Anaheim Ducks, Ryan O'Reilly with the St. Louis Blues, and Dylan Strome as well. So, and like I said, I think Erie is going to be a much improved hockey club this year, and look forward to hopefully going down to a game as well. So you guys can check out Wes's Twitter page at Wes Wolfe 91. He's also on LinkedIn under the same name, and Facebook as well. And guys, you can also check out the Erie Otters website, ottershockey.com. That's ottershockey.com. And if you're a fan of the OHL like I am, check out the Ontario Hockey League's website, the ontariohockeyleague.com as well. And before we get going, guys, just going to wrap up this show. Just wanted to let you know, for wrestling fans, the next Live with CDP Sports podcast is going to be tomorrow, Friday, July 15th at 3 p.m. Eastern with my guest, Martina Burnett. She's a pro wrestling enthusiastic, big fan of the AEW and WWE. And Martina is going to come on and talk about the current stuff going on in AEW, All Elite Wrestling, and also with the WWE. So if you guys are a pro wrestling fan, tune into my podcast show tomorrow with Martina Burnett, and we're going to talk a little bit AEW and WWE and the latest news going on with both of those pro wrestling organizations as well. And I'm looking forward to speaking to her as well. And also, guys, the Detroit Red Wings ended up doing some news, free agency signings yesterday with Steve Yzerman. They got Andrew Kopp from the Rangers, signed David Perron from the Blues, former Storm defenseman Ben Sherratt, they signed from Montreal, Dominic Kuba-Luck, they brought in, and also Ole Mate. From the Kings, and he's a former London Knight too, by the way. So I think the Red Wings have improved themselves. I think they've improved their goaltending in the offseason. Their defense looks a little bit better, and getting these guys, I think Yzerman did okay. I give Steve Yzerman B for his free agent signings as well. So I expect the Red Wings to be a much improved team next year, and hopefully maybe they'll be competing for a playoff spot next year, but we'll see. They're in a tough conference and tough division as well. And speaking before I go, the Erie Otters open up the 2022-2023 season on the road for their first 4 games at the Peterborough Petes, at Kingston, at Ottawa, and at Mississauga before the Erie Otters return home for their home opener Saturday, October 8th versus London. I would love to be at that home opener for the Otters and London Knights on October 8th in Erie to see, as the London Knights are pretty competitive every year, and I do think the Erie Otters are going to be a much improved hockey team this year. So Erie's got a bit of a tough start with these 4 road games before they come home to the Erie Insurance Arena on October 8th against those London Knights, and Mike Stubbs and Jam Van Horn. I'll do the games for the London Knights as well. And guys, just to let you know, I do this with all my podcast shows. Just to let you know, Live with CDP podcast, the audio version is downloaded to Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, and LinkedIn as well. And I want to say thank you to everybody watching this live on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe and hit the like notification on my YouTube channel. And thank you to everyone watching this on Facebook Live and on Twitter Live at Chris D. Palmy on Twitter if you'd like to follow me there as well. I'm at about 911 followers as well. And guys, you can also check me out on TikTok at Live with CDP. That's at Live with CDP on TikTok. I posted a 7-second clip of me and one of the camera operators with Rogers TV last night for the Guelph United soccer game we were doing for Rogers TV. We did the 40-yard sprint, and I happened to win, and I ran the 40-yard sprint in just over 7.5 seconds. So this 50-year-old guy who's not in the best of shape can still move a little bit. So it was kind of fun, and I hope you guys can check out Rogers TV 20 for that United game again this week. I think the broadcast went really well, and the other camera operators did a really good job, and the producer Neil White and Adam Quigley as well from Rogers TV. So it was a lot of fun, and Guelph won that game last night against Simcoe 3-0, by the way. So also, guys, just to let you know, StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP podcast. Oh, by the way, guys, shout out to Andy's Auto Service in Guelph. I believe they're on 386 Elizabeth Street in Guelph. They've been in business since 1958. They did some work on my car this week for my air conditioning unit. So I want to say shout out to Steve and the guys at Andy's Auto shop on 386 Elizabeth Street for servicing my car. And thanks to Doug, one of my friends I met on my podcast, for referring me to Andy's Auto Shop on 386 Elizabeth Street in Guelph. And they've been in business since 1958 as well. So I wanted to give them a shout out as well. And also, guys, wordpress.com/home/live with CDP podcast.wordpress.com. Check out my latest blog I did on my London Majors Welling Jackfish game I attended at beautiful Labatt Park in London this past Sunday. I hope you guys can read the article and let me know what you think of it. And if you're a huge baseball fan, everybody talks about Doubleday Field in Cooperstown, the Field of Dreams in Iowa. If you're a true baseball fan, go check out Labatt's Park in beautiful London, Ontario. It's been there since 1877. It's the oldest ballpark in North America, and it's been the home of the London Majors of the Intercounty League since 1925. Shout out to Noel Smith and Dylan Baker for arranging a media pass for me to come up and do an interview with them. And also, I'll watch the game, which Welland won 9-5 in 10 innings, which the game took over 4.5 hours to play. It was a great experience, great ballpark, and I hope to see Noel and Dylan up there again to cover another Majors game this summer in August as well. So guys, check out Labatt Park in London, Ontario, and check out a Majors game. It's good baseball, and it's a great ballpark they have in London as well. And that's about it, guys. I really hope you enjoyed my podcast tonight, again with Wes Wolfe, the assistant coach with the Erie Otters, and looking forward to hopefully running into him and Sean Bernard, who I had on my podcast a year ago as the Erie Otters radio play-by-play announcer as well. That's about it, guys. And again, next Live with CDP Sports Podcast, Season 4, Episode 9 is going to be tomorrow, July 15th at 3 o'clock Eastern. Guest is Martina Barnett. She's a pro wrestling enthusiastic for AEW and WWE. She's also has a major in communications as well, and is looking to start up her own possible wrestling podcast as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. Talking AEW, maybe when CM Punk's coming back, and what she thinks on Roman Reigns against Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam in the last man standing match as well. So yes, pro wrestling fans, tune in tomorrow. July 15th, Friday, July 15th, 3 o'clock Eastern, Martina Burnett, and we're going to talk pro wrestling. So I hope everybody has a great evening, and we'll see you guys tomorrow at 3 o'clock for another live edition of Live with CDP podcast. And again, thanks to my guest, Wes Wolfe, the assistant head coach from the Erie Otters, for coming on tonight. And give me about 10, 15 minutes, and I will download the audio version of tonight's podcast show with Wes. Have a great night, guys, and we'll see you guys tomorrow at 3 o'clock talking pro wrestling on Live with CDP Sports Podcast.